Good morning and welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Sue Perez. There are a lot of misconceptions about organ donation and tissue donation. And usually information is what helps settle these issues and just gives us more understanding. So we brought two people in today that we're going to talk about these things and just get us up to speed. The first gentleman is Bryan Stewart and Kathleen Hostert. Welcome both of you to the show today.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
I don't think this is a very typical subject matter, but it's so important. And we have no idea how many people this will hit home with. But Bryan, we're going to start off with you. You're the president of the Donate Life California Registry. Yes. How would you become a president of something like that?
Well, it begins with the registry. You know, I just happen to be leader of a statewide working group that administers the registry. But the history actually began in the year 2001 when the state of California authorized a computerized donor registry. You know, a lot of Californians will be very familiar with the pink dot stickers and donor cards that were issued for about 30 years by the DMV. The thing is we never saw those donor cards, and the pink dot stickers were never legally binding. So the key time that you need those documents and you need the documentation of someone's wishes to donate is at the hospital when you're meeting with a family that's facing the loss of a loved one. And so if you don't have those documents, the family doesn't know their loved one's wishes if they haven't had a conversation. The great thing about a computerized donor registry is once you sign up on the registry, the decision is made. And it's a great comfort to the family knowing their loved one's wishes, which are legally binding, and the person that signs up at the DMV makes that decision and knows that their wishes will be honored. So it makes a huge difference when it actually comes to a matter of actual organ and tissue donation.
Okay, excellent. And Kathleen, you're kind of on the, I would say, maybe informal side to this, but not any less important.
Right.
You're an actual donor of a kidney.
That's correct.
And just give us a little bit on that real quick.
My husband was in need of a kidney transplant. He was on dialysis for 2.5 years, and we went through the testing process, and I was actually blessed enough to be able to donate a kidney to him. And he just celebrated his 11th anniversary.
His 11th anniversary. And he owes you big time.
You know, we joke about that, but you know, the fact that my children are able to see their dad and have their dad back has just been a true miracle for us. So.
And you look healthy too, and everybody's doing good.
Then knock on wood, we're all doing great.
All right, excellent. Well, let's talk about this then in an informational sense, Bryan. How does this process work?
Well, with the donor registry, it really begins with the decision to donate. And the reason why we need people to say yes at the DMV is because there's a great need for organ and tissue donors in this country. There's especially a great need for kidney donation. Communities, Latino communities and African American communities, they face a very high, disproportionately high incidence of end-stage kidney failure due to hypertension and diabetes. And so right now nationwide there are about 80,000 people on the kidney waiting list. And you know, the only way that they can be freed of a life on dialysis like Kathleen's husband is either through a living donor, but if there isn't a donor in their family or a close friend, that can be something that's just not available. So then they're counting on someone who has agreed to donate their organs upon their death. And the way you assure that your decision to donate is followed through upon is by signing up on the state donor registry. Right now, 5.2 million Californians have signed up on the Donate Life California registry, and that's only about 3 years into the first 5-year renewal cycle that we have for licenses and ID cards. So for about 2 more years, by the time we're done with the next 2 years, we may have 9 or 10 million people in California that have said, yes, I want to donate my organs and tissues upon my death. And you know, that's just such an amazing way to help your community. And when the people I've met who've been on the waiting list and whose lives are renewed through the gift of a donated organ, it's a true miracle.
Is it, and I don't want to get eerie or anything, because for some people it's sensitive, and you know, people even have religious beliefs about these things, but when you say I want to donate my organs, is that all donatable organs? And how, and what are the parameters of tissue donation?
Right. Well, first of all, I'll say that when it comes to religious views, all major religions support donation.
Okay.
The only one that has any kinds of strong feelings that stand in the way of donation is Shinto Buddhism, because of some aspects of the dead body and what it represents. But otherwise, Christian religions see donation as something that is a charitable gift to another human being, and in fact, the Pope is a registered organ donor.
Okay.
So
thank you for that one.
Absolutely. But what I'll say is that when it comes to signing up on the donor registry, 98% of the people that sign up on our registry do so with the DMV. And when they check yes, they are agreeing to donate all organs and tissues for transplantation or research. Now, we also have a website at donatelifecalifornia.org or donavidacalifornia.org for obvious reasons. You can go on there to modify your profile, or when you're signing up on the registry, you can specify specific organs and tissues that you do not wish to donate, or circumstances under which you do not wish to donate. So we want to make it very customizable, but well over 90% of people just check yes and say, you know what, I just want to donate everything. So what are you agreeing to donate? Well, life-saving organs that can be transplanted, including kidneys, liver, heart, lungs, and pancreas and small intestine. And then when it comes to tissues, you would be surprised how many tissues can be used for medical applications. Skin to heal burns. Bones are donated and crafted into specific shapes for use in spinal surgeries or oral surgeries. You have saphenous veins that are used for bypass surgeries. In connective tissues like tendons that can rebuild knees that are destroyed through sports injuries. So you can save up to 8 lives as an organ donor, and you can touch another 50 lives and help them heal through the gift of tissue donation. So it's really something that makes a huge difference in the lives of our neighbors.
Now, let's just use the kidney donations as an example here. If a person is on this list that signed up for a kidney transplant, how long is the average wait?
The average wait varies by blood type. That can be a huge factor because depending on your blood type, you could be competing with other blood types. But the average wait can be anywhere from 3 to 7 years. And that's a very long time on dialysis. And Kathleen and her husband are very familiar with what an extended period of time on dialysis and the toll that takes both on your life and on the life of your family. So, certainly through organ donation, we can minimize that wait. And so that's something that we seek to do is, we're fortunate that dialysis is not necessarily a death sentence, unlike, say, if you need a liver or a heart transplant or lung transplant, the clock is very much ticking. So sometimes those needs are much more urgent, but, with kidney donation, it's something that is needed and in great numbers.
Let's go over and talk about that, Kathleen, because let me ask this first. Was your husband, how long did he have to wait to actually get on the list?
He was gone through some testing before. He had high blood pressure, and we were noticing some things in his labs that weren't working well. And actually, due to insurance purposes, he had to be at a certain level with his creatinine and other things to be able to start dialysis. But he was listed pretty shortly after we met with the transplant center. They put you through a series of testing to make sure that
how is that determined? Because I, just gonna, small talk here and there with people, and I always thought you had to be at a certain point in your progress, if I could use that term, in kidney failure or kidney disease to be able to even get on the list.
Right, and that's what part of the transplant center will do with you. They'll put you through the workup. They'll do it based on your labs and where you're at, your creatinine and all those levels to see if you are ready to be listed yet. And that's what they do with my husband.
So they monitor it. So then what happened after that?
He was listed and he started dialysis about 6 months later. He was on dialysis for 2.5 years. And, to a dialysis patient that goes in there 3 times a week, you're looking at a life-saving treatment every day that you go in there. And it is very traumatic. For some people, my husband was lucky enough that he could actually walk out of there feeling better. Whereas most people, he was in a center with 250 people, and most people didn't. Most people had issues during dialysis. They just were not feeling well and actually felt worse afterwards. So Craig was very fortunate that he did feel better when he left.
Was he able to work during this time?
Yeah, he did go to work.
Now, did you think about donating right away and waited, or you waited, said this is enough, check me out?
I was actually 6 months pregnant with my daughter when he started dialysis, which was, you know, a big blow to where we thought our life was going. And I didn't know at the time that I could actually, I didn't even know anything about living donation. And we went to a hospital to be worked up to get on the list. And that's when the doctor said, you know, you can give him a kidney as a living donor. And I was so excited, I had no idea that I could. So, but I had to wait till my daughter was a year old to start my testing, because as a woman, your body's, you know, out of whack with your hormones and everything after pregnancy. But once I found out, it was not a question in my mind. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And to be able to save somebody's life it's a miracle.
Especially your husband. Did you get any flack?
I only got flack from my son. He was 9 years old at the time, and we sat down at the dinner table and we told him that I was going to start my testing, and he got very upset and he started crying, and he basically ran out of the room, and we thought, uh-oh, you know, we'll just kind of lay low and not really say anything to him. And about a month later, he came to us at a family meeting at the dinner table and said, Mom, Dad, I've made a decision. And I thought, well, are you getting a tattoo? Are you moving out? What are you doing?
And he's 9?
And he said, I'm okay if you give Dad your kidney. And I said, well, what was wrong? And he said, I wanted to give it to him.
Oh.
So we had to explain to him, you know, that he was too young and that he wasn't ready. So now he'll tell you he's his dad's backup. So.
Oh, wow. And that poses another question then. So sometimes the donations don't last a lifetime then?
Yeah, and that's the thing about transplantation. It's a wonderful step in your life. It's a different chapter, but it's not a cure. You know, you're still dealing with the issues, and you are taking anti-rejection drugs, which have side effects. So, but at the same time, you have your life back. You know, you have your life back. You're living as a normal person, and you're able to go on with your life. So.
And the impact that can have on different people, it varies so much. I mean, I've met people that, you know, get a transplant, and within a few years, just something doesn't work, that, you know, the organ never quite fully takes, and they end up having to get retransplanted. On the other hand, I know a woman who was transplanted at 14 months of age. She's now 25 years old.
Oh, goodness.
So we know a couple of girls. One received a heart transplant at 5 weeks of age. She just graduated high school. So it's remarkable when you see these success stories, and very moving when you meet this person and you realize how much they have to give to their families, to their communities, knowing that without someone else stepping up and saying, yes, I would be willing to donate, they wouldn't be here.
Right.
You know, and so the opportunity to give life to others, you know, the benefits are so great. You know, it has a potential to change history when you think about it, and the ripple effect that that can have on other people, and who they inspire downstream. It just makes our community stronger.
Because the person that receives the donation is helped, but their family, friends are helped.
Their family,
I mean,
their
Kathleen,
friends.
she helped her husband, but now she's reaping the rewards of a healthy husband.
Right.
And of course your children are benefited by it.
And in the aftermath of that, Kathleen and Craig were inspired. They wanted to help the people that were in the dialysis center that they left behind. So they created a run and walk that every year brings thousands upon thousands of people together and inspires them. And that never would have happened without this experience.
Has it changed your lifestyle in any way?
Not our lifestyle, it's just kind of it's changed our belief in life, you know, that everything happens for a reason, and sometimes you're confronted with things that are not so fun, and it's how you take those things and make them, you know, make them work for you, and
how
keep a
is your
positive
health?
attitude. I'm fine.
Your physical being is not changed, and you're well.
No.
And she obviously has a very good working kidney, because you drink a lot of Diet Coke.
I do. Thank you, Bryan.
Talk to us more about the registry, Bryan. Let me ask you this: do bone marrow transplants and donors, does that come through you also?
That does not. It's a very different process. Just like living donation is a different process. Bone marrow transplantation, you do it with living donors. The testing that's involved and the matching, it's a very specific process. Whereas with the donor registry, it's very specifically focused on what kind of anatomical gift do you wish to make upon your death. And so upon death, that agreement and that commitment you've made goes into force. So what happens is the organizations that administer and are caretakers for the organ and tissue donation process, they receive phone calls from hospitals or the coroners or funeral homes letting them know that there is someone who is a potential donor. It's someone who's just died, or someone who has suffered a very severe head injury that makes them a candidate to be an organ donor. And I'll take a quick sidebar for a second, in the sense that the head injury part is important, because when it comes to organ donation, the rest of the body needs to be able to keep functioning so that the organs and tissues receive blood and oxygen. If the heart stops beating, then the organs die with the rest of the body. Whereas with head injuries, oftentimes you deal with what's called brain death, where the brain is starved of oxygen, but the rest of the body's kept functioning. So organ donation, the opportunity to donate organs, is very, very rare. Less than 1 in 100 deaths actually qualifies to be a donor.
So even though someone signed up doesn't mean ultimately
That's
they're going
correct.
to be a donor.
I think people think that it happens a lot more often than it does, but in our service area, in just the greater Los Angeles area of 19 million people, about 700 people a year are actually medically in a position to become organ donors. That's all. So that's our universe we're dealing with organ donation. So what happens is the recovery organizations get the phone call, then they work sensitively with the families, either in person at the hospital or by telephone, and let them know about the opportunity to donate. Now, if someone is on the registry, we're able to inform them at that time, then show them documentation that your loved one signed up on the registry. Here were the conditions under which they agreed to donate, and we're going to proceed with organ recovery. And for so many families that are already dealing with the sudden loss of a loved one, that is a real gift to them, to know, you know what, they took care of that. They made that decision. And so, and they can be very proud that their loved one wanted to give life in their death.
Is it something that you encourage people to tell their families ahead of time?
It certainly helps to let you know, if I've come back from the DMV and I let my loved one know, you know what, I came upon this question on my form, so I checked yes because this is important to me. That can certainly be a good thing to tell your family. We'd certainly encourage it. However, the documentation is such that it's very clear what the wishes of a loved one were. So if they didn't have that conversation, it still can be very affirming to the family to see.
Is it reversible by a
It is
family
not.
member?
Actually, it is not. And in California and most other states in the country, when you make the decision and you check yes and you join a donor registry, it cannot be revoked. Only under very specific circumstances and only by the person that actually signed up in the first place. I, as the registered donor, can go onto the website and remove my name from the list, so I'm in complete control of my gift. However, it's not the family's decision. We believe very, very strongly in how important it is for an individual to authorize what they want to happen with their body. And I realize a lot of people, feel that, well, this is a family decision, and for some families, that's okay. If you feel that's a family decision and you want that to be a decision your family makes, you don't have to sign up on the registry. But if it's important to you and you want to make and confirm that, well, then sign up on the registry. Just check yes at the DMV.
Why do you think people say no to this?
I tell you, a big reason in California especially is people are so used to the pink dots and donor cards, a lot of them think they're already on the registry. So there's a lot of people, and we've done some research on this, that don't check yes because they say, oh, I'm already registered, when in fact they're not. They think that by putting the pink dot sticker on their donor card, somehow that magically got them on a registry. But the fact is they're not on a computerized registry. So that's number one. And then number two is there's some people that think that, that everyone knows about that pink dot sticker and that pink dot symbol, which is now imprinted on the license, once you check yes, I should say. But they think that, oh, if someone is trying to save my life at the hospital and they see that pink dot sticker, they won't work as hard to save me, which is really just so completely not true.
All it takes is one person telling it to another. And
well, that's the thing, is someone at some point said that and then it just caught on. It's just like that, oh, someone woke up in the bathtub and their kidneys were gone. It's silly and it's crazy, and yet it's so specific. And I think it ties to, our own anxiousness about mortality, that it takes on a life of its own. But the fact is that hospitals, they're in the business of saving lives. When someone dies in a hospital, that's serious business. They do not want that to happen. And they are certainly not going to weigh the value of, let's see, do I save this person's life or do I think about how many lives could be saved through their, donating their organs? It's all about saving lives and then the opportunity to donate. And I'll also add that the only way you can actually be a donor in the first place is if you get the most aggressive life-saving treatment. Because if the heart stops beating, as I explained a couple minutes ago, you can't be a donor. So everyone wants the hospital to work as hard as they can to save lives. We do, the hospital does, and of course the family does.
So the numbers as far as organs that are donated are probably very small compared to the registry and the people that actually...
Right. I mean, after, we have 5.2 million people signed up. However, the statistical likelihood that any of them in 1 year will become a donor is fairly low. It's about 1 in 27,000 people will actually become a donor. So that's the thing, is you're trying to get a lot of people signed up so that relatively few that are actually in a position to donate actually do. And it smooths the process greatly.
Now let me ask you this, because this is kind of a current event, but there was some little internet blurbs out there about the Apple guy, Steve Jobs, and his ability to get the, was it a liver? Or?
A liver, yes, he received a liver transplant.
And his ability to get it because he had money and he could go anywhere to get it.
Yes.
Speak to that.
Well, first of all, Steve Jobs, anytime a celebrity gets a transplant, those are the ones you hear about. You don't hear about the other 28,000 people a year that receive a transplant. You hear about the one that, the instant feeling is, oh, they must have gamed the system or they must have done something improper. The fact is, with Steve Jobs, is he completely followed the rules. And it really deals with liver transplantation in particular. The way organs are allocated is according to, in generally speaking, a radius of how far they can travel from one place to another, right? Because once organs are recovered, you only have so much time to transplant them. Now, kidneys can make a coast-to-coast journey, and they do so routinely because they can be outside the body 48, even 72 hours between recovery and transplantation. On the other hand, hearts, only 4 to 6 hours outside the body. So they tend to stay in a very tight geographical distribution. Livers are somewhere in between. And the thing is as it stands right now, with liver transplantation, it's also somewhat unequal in the sense that some parts of the country, the waiting lists are very short. Other parts of the country where there's a much more of a need for transplantation, the lists are much longer. And so that's one of the things, and the LA Times actually did a great article on this back in 2006, and they titled the article Death by Geography, in the sense that where you lived when it came to liver transplantation or where you were listed could have a great impact on your ability to get a transplant. So, Steve Jobs, the fact that he has the ability perhaps to be listed in 2 places at once, one which is close to where he works, and another which is, a plane trip away, and he has probably pretty easy access to transportation. You know what? That's an advantage he's going to have.
And it's perfectly legal and ethical.
But I know people, it's legal, it's ethical, it follows the rules of, listing yourself at multiple transplant centers. And the thing is if he got that call for a transplant in Tennessee, if he can't get there in time, it goes on to the next person. And keep in mind that even though he's able to be listed, that didn't necessarily move him to the top of the waiting list. The only way you get to the top of the waiting list with liver transplantation is if you're extremely sick. It's called status 1A, and it moves you to the top of the list wherever you're transplanted or wherever you're listed. So, but it's something that we deal with as professionals, the sense that those are the ones you hear about, and already people start thinking, well, something must be unfair, when it's really not.
Now, let's go back to Kathleen a little bit and talk about how a person becomes a living kidney donor, because I don't have a lot of knowledge and experience with this, so in my mind, do people just automatically give their kidney if they don't know the person? What's out there?
Typically, it's when you know somebody who's in need of a kidney and you're asked by that person in the transplant center to actually go in and have a workup done to see if you are an eligible donor. And we had one friend who had 20 friends go in and get tested, and one thing it is doing is a lot of people are finding out when they go in that they have diabetes, they've got certain issues that are keeping them from preventing to be a donor, but at the same time, she also saved a few people's lives as those people went in and found out they had things wrong with them that they didn't know. So you go through a very rigorous testing process to make sure, because the one benefit and the one thing they're looking for as a living donor is to make sure that you're very healthy and that this isn't going to cause you any problems down the road. So if you had a history of diabetes or a history of blood pressure, anything that could affect your kidneys in the long run, they're looking to make sure that it's the best decision for you and your health to actually give a kidney. They're also looking for you know, ethical things to make sure you're doing it for the right reason, you're not being paid for it, you're not being coerced to do it, you're doing it because it's an unconditional gift and that's truly what you want to do. So they're looking from a health standpoint and also to make sure that ethically and socially it's the right thing for you to, that's what you want to do.
Can you speak to that regarding like being paid off or something?
Absolutely. In the United States, it is illegal to buy and sell organs, period. So what you want to do is to make sure that, you know, there's not maybe some kind of relationship that's financial in nature. And you hear about this in other countries where the transplant system is much less regulated, where you have maybe poor people or people that are in debt that are feeling like their only way out of their situation is to sell a kidney. And obviously there are people around the world that are willing to pay for that. But the thing is that takes advantage of people's you know, financial situation and desperation, we feel in a very unethical way. And that isn't necessarily a path to freedom, as it were. It may be a temporary measure. So in the United States, it's flat out forbidden. And you know, that's something that we want to look for and make sure that that part of the law is being followed. You know, organ donation is voluntary. It's something that is meant as something that is altruistic. It's to help other people, not necessarily to enrich yourself or family members.
Yeah. And what was the time involved by the time you went in and got tested and the donation actually took place?
It took a couple months because you're doing a lot of testing on your body to make sure your blood and your urine and several things are okay. You don't have any past, you're doing a lot of past history. So it's about 6 months.
And what type of testing do they do to make sure it's not for financial gain or anything?
They ask you a lot of questions.
Do they do background on you or anything?
Not necessarily background, but they, you know, they kind of twist questions around where they ask you the same question 5 times throughout an interview, and ask you some very pointed questions about your relationship with the person you're donating to, and you know.
And it used to be that transplants happen very often between, you know, blood relatives or spouses or close friends, but now they actually have a fairly new development called kidney chains, where you may have a husband and wife, say husband A and wife A are not compatible, but one wants to donate, and then you have husband B and wife B.
Talking about kidney-wise.
Basically kidney-wise, right, exactly. And they have what's basically a swap, and so husband A donates to wife B, and husband B donates to wife A. So both of them, incompatible within their spousal relationships, are compatible between each other. And they can even start chains where husband A gives to wife B, husband B gives to wife C, husband C gives to wife D, and they could actually involve 8 transplants by the time you close the circle.
Wow.
So when you talk about being able to reduce the kidney transplant waiting list, that is a huge part of the solution, is being able to combine families that may not be compatible within each other, but can be compatible with other families. And then next thing you know, you've taken 8 people off of the kidney transplant waiting list in one extended surgical procedure.
And we have just a couple seconds, but how likely is there, or is there a statistic that an immediate family member is compatible with the, like in your case?
I think it's about 25% that you would be compatible.
Well, thank you so much. This was really enlightening, and thank you for joining us on Joy in Our Town.
This program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network and made possible by your telethon dollars. Your continual support can keep Joy in Our Town brought to your home every day. So write Joy in Our Town, P.O. Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys are much too much. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're going to beat them and bust them. Beat them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a dad
One more
today.
time. Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys.